Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome into episode number 52 of our WWE 2021 Save and TEW 2020. This is Raw for week 4 in October. We said it was going to be a wild month on Raw, and as you've seen thus far, it has been, and it's only going to continue with this episode. And so, speaking of that, if you have not watched the most recent episode of Raw, you will probably need to do that, or else you'll be completely lost on the storylines that we're going to discuss in this particular episode because there was certainly one of our biggest moments yet in the save that took place at the end of that show, and a lot of that is going to be geared towards a lot of the things on this show. So that is just a note there, and we have some other stuff to talk about after this particular episode, after this particular episode of Raw. So we'll get to that a little bit later on, kind of tease some other stuff we've got coming up as well. So let's jump in the pre-show. Mustafa Ali gets the win over Mansoor, 722. The reverse 450 does it. 55 overall here. Not a bad match, but Ali, of course, has been in the storyline with the U.S. title and Kevin Owens and everything we've got going on there. But since he's not wrestling on this particular episode, we put him on the pre-show here to give him another win. And we will have a little mention of him, though, in this episode based on that whole situation we've got going on with Owens and the U.S. title. So Ali gets the win, and now we jump into what is going to be a very interesting setup for this edition of Raw. There will be a theme running throughout, and let's get it started here on this one. And it starts off with Steve Austin. He is backstage, and he's making his way to the parking lot. And Pat McAfee following him to the parking lot. Austin's got a chair. He's got him a 12-pack of Steve Weisers, and he walks out to the parking lot, sits a chair down, and he is just sitting in the parking lot with a 12-pack of Steve Weisers. The Steve Austin way here, and he tells McAfee that he is going to be waiting for the Bullet Club in the parking lot. Yes, the Bullet Club, who made their debut on last week's edition of Raw. He is going to be waiting for them in the parking lot. He said he's got everything surrounded. He's got all the entrances. He's got security everywhere. They're not getting in, but he's going to be waiting in the parking lot should they come in that direction. And then Austin tells McAfee that he's just going to sit right here until the main event because he says he's really looking forward to the main event, which is going to be Daniel Bryan going one-on-one with Montez Ford. So Austin kind of hypes that up a little bit. And so there's your setup. And as you'll see, it's going to be quite some entertaining, hopefully, segments with Austin sitting in the parking lot with his 12-pack of beer. So let's see how that goes throughout this episode. But that is your setup here as Austin waiting for the trio that made a huge impact on last week's episode. And we start the show here match-wise with Liv Morgan getting a win over Carmella, 10-25 with a submission, 52 overall. Not a bad match here, but this is going to be an episode that's very angle-heavy. And so we are not going to be necessarily using a lot of our top stars on this episode. You guys know we filter in and out on that sometimes. There are just some episodes that we don't, we have storylines built in, and we can't use a lot of our tip-top stars because of the storylines we're pushing. But that is something that, you'll see next week. We'll talk about that as we go throughout. Next week's episode is going to be a big episode. With matches. So it's just kind of one of those. We kind of go back and forth on that sometimes based on the stories. But Morgan gets the win here. Gives her, a nice little victory here. Of course, they've got some momentum going. Tag team-wise, the Rebels, Liv Morgan, Toni Storm, they got the win over Bayley and Sasha Banks last week in tag team action. A very surprising win probably for most. But certainly there's fallout from that too based on the storyline with Bayley and Sasha. But Liv Morgan gets a win here in 10-25, the victory over Carmella. And then Austin sitting in the parking lot still. One Steve Weiser down. He's down to 11. Austin, here he is waiting, and he's just sitting there. Here comes Cesaro. Cesaro certainly completely just pissed off about the WWE Championship match. He had Edge beat. He was going, for the sharpshooter yet again. He had already made Edge, give up once, and he was going for the sharpshooter to win the championship, his big moment. And then, of course, AJ Styles interfered and got involved, and that caused the DQ, and Cesaro did not walk out the champion. So, a very fuming Cesaro here, and he says that he wants another shot, and Austin says he will get another shot at the WWE Championship. So great rating here, 86 overall. But Austin says he also knows that Cesaro is somebody that he needs to get his aggression out. It needs to be by fighting. And so Cesaro, is going to be involved in a very big six-man tag team match we're going to have coming up later. Cesaro and the Mysterios against the Lucha Brothers and John Morrison. So that is a big match. We have a six-man tag team match there in that one. So Cesaro will be in action a little bit later. But Austin tells him that he will get another shot at the WWE Championship. And then, a nice little match here. Sheamus gets the win over Chad Gable, 9:53 using the bro kick. We get the crowd buzzing with this one, 72 overall. As we've always said, Gable has some good matches. His overness is like in the 40s, but he's probably lost more matches than anyone on Raw, but he always delivers a nice quality match here. So 9:53. I think we also did steal the show on this. Yeah, so we wanted them to kind of go all out on this one. So they give us a good match here. 72, of course, Sheamus also involved in what happened at the end of last week's Raw with the Bullet Club as he came out to, try to help out Cesaro. That did not work out because he got hit in the back with a chair by Finn Balor. And after this match, it is Sheamus who, gets the microphone after he just beats Chad Gable, and he takes aim at Finn Balor. And he says that, if Balor wants to hit him with a chair, that's fine. But Sheamus says he likes to settle things in the ring like a man, and that's what he wants. So Balor, anytime, he decides to show up, Sheamus says he'll be waiting for him, just like Austin's waiting for him in the parking lot. He'll be waiting for Finn Balor the next time he shows his face here on Raw. So that, again, something else here that kind of builds in. We've got all these intertwined people that are just kind of connected in different ways. And this is kind of that here, too, as we had Balor attack Sheamus on that episode last week. So this is kind of Sheamus basically sending a message to Balor here. 66, so not great, but we did kind of plug this up, as it was rated. I think Sheamus is rated on entertainment. Balor's rated on overness. We'll talk about Balor a little bit later in terms of the overness. That is something that we're going to have to sort of work through based on the overness of Balor and Adam Cole, of course, who's our other Bullet Club member. But that is something it's going to take a little time, I think, to work through that. And I'll show you exactly why, because those two were not exactly treated great in NXT by the computer booking here. So we'll look at that later. And then Kevin Owens, who says that, we've played up this whole story with Owens. Austin sort of gave him some advice on not doing the open challenge every single week. Owens has tried. Ali last week said that the next time Owens, had his U.S. title open challenge, Ali was going to accept it. And Owens says right here in a promo, he will be back next week, and he plans on defending his United States title. We're starting to see this, one of those visual things where you're seeing the wear on Kevin Owens after all of these matches and all these big, title matches of great importance that he's had. You can start to see it with him. And, is he wearing down? Is he not? The announcers kind of play that up. But Owens will be back next week on what, like I said, it's going to be a pretty loaded edition of Raw. So Owens perhaps will defend that championship next week. 80 overall. Owens always gives us good promo, so no surprise there. And then in tag team action, I told you this is not going to be our greatest from a match standpoint. We were basically just having to pick people out and find some matches here on this card. Nothing against the Dirty Dogs, but they do get the win here over Tozawa and Gulak, 721, 57 overall. Not great, but like I said, I mean, this is one where there came a point where I started looking at the matches. I'm like, do we have anyone else that I can have to have a match as I started going through it? Because there are just so many different people that we didn't necessarily want to use in matches on this show just because we're trying to play the stories off based on last week's episode and all that. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But that is just, it got to a point where I was like, wait a second, am I actually going to have enough people to build a match, or am I going to have to put someone here somewhere to kind of do that? But Dirty Dogs get a win. They're part of the tag team division. They've had their shot at the titles, all that. But we just occasionally need to give them a win to keep them strong. But they've kind of just been treading water for a while. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, they're just a team that's I would like to do more with. And there is some plans I've got, somewhere about maybe trying to do that. but I just don't know when we are going to do it or if we will do it with the Dirty Dogs. So they're unfortunately just kind of slotted where they are right now. 721, they get the win here over Tozawa and Gulak. And then Austin down to 9. Steve Weiser's now. He's really going through these, isn't he? He's in the parking lot, and here comes Edge and Orton. They are leaving. They walk up. They tell Austin that they're not going to be here because they have their own issues they've got to deal with. And Edge says, he's still the WWE champion. This is still his show. So even if AJ Styles and Adam Cole and Finn Balor, if all these guys want to come in and do what they did last week, Edge says he and Orton have to do some talking. They have some things they need to talk about, and they're leaving because they don't have a match on this show. And he says that he just wants to remind everyone he's the champion. It's his show, and he's going to do whatever he wants to do. And so Austin says, you go right ahead. But Austin says just because, those three arrived last week, Austin says he hasn't forgotten the actions of Edge and Orton and what they've done over the past several months. He said there's still a lot of people that are out for revenge on Edge and Orton, and Austin says he will make sure that those people get those opportunities to do just that. So sort of, again, we have a power dynamic here where it's, you've got this group with Edge and Orton. They want to be on top. You've got the Bullet Club involved. They want to be on top. That's what we're really trying to build here. Just a lot of different power dynamics in play. Maybe Game of Thrones-esque, where you've got these different houses that we kind of have now built throughout Raw. And that's kind of what we're playing up here is just sort of a power struggle between a lot of different factions and groups. That's kind of what we wanted. And so that's what we're playing up here. So Edge and Orton, they have business to talk to try to figure out what they're going to do about this whole situation because, of course, they have their own issues with what happened last week with Styles hitting Edge with the chair, Adam Cole hit Randy Orton with the chair, just, chaos everywhere. So they're going to go figure that out. But as they're leaving, it's the return of Big E, who has been out for a couple weeks after that attack from Omos. And Big E comes walking into the picture, and Edge and Orton just sort of stand there. Big E kind of turns his eye. Big E's holding his ribs. He's still injured from that attack from Omos. And Big E stares down Edge, stares down Orton, and they walk off kind of, looking a little suspicious at Big E, keeping their eye on him as they leave the building. And Austin, then, Big E starts to make his way into the arena, but Austin says, hold on a second there, big fella. He says Big E he doesn't know why Big E's here. Austin said he's made it clear these two talked, and he's told Big E he's not cleared yet to return to the ring. So he's made him stay away because he does not want Big E to get injured and be out for a long amount of time. He's got too much riding on Big E. And so that's kind of, the setup here. But Big E, very frustrated. He says, hey, I know what's going down tonight. Big E said, he knows he was told to stay away, but he also knows that Xavier Woods has challenged Omos to a match tonight, and Big E says he's got to be there. Austin tells him, I understand, I get it, but Austin says, I just can't take that risk of letting something happen to you out there and you perhaps ending your career by the hands of this big Omos. So that is, Austin sending a little bit of a warning to Big E that he just cannot allow this, even though, Xavier Woods is seemingly sounds just ludicrous that he has decided to challenge Omos, but Austin says he's got to do that on his own. He's got Kofi Kingston, but he just cannot afford to have Big E getting injured here. So Big E kind of shakes his head at Austin. He's not happy either, and Big E sort of walks off in the opposite direction. So that's kind of the setup here, and we'll see what's to come with this match we're going to have coming up shortly. By the way, that was a great segment, 91, I forgot to mention. But this one, it is MVP, and he is with Omos, and Pat McAfee with the interview here, 60 overall. MVP says Xavier Woods, plain and simple, is a moron for wanting to have a match with Omos here. He has no idea what Xavier Woods is doing. He's got no chance. Did Woods not see what Omos did to Big E, what he did to Akira Tozawa? Just the list goes on and on. Omos wants Big E. He wants him to come back, and, MVP knows that Big E's not cleared and all this other stuff, but he doesn't care. He says, when Big E returns, Omos will finish the job. And so this is your setup here for the match. And I am just like, you guys know how I get about these Omos matches. Like, I have no idea what to expect here. This could be a 15, a 30. I have no clue. But let's find out what we're going to get, because that match is next with Omos and Xavier Woods. Oh my, this is, I mean, I would have to say this is sort of a minor miracle here, a 48. That's not that's not as bad as I thought it would be, but I think it still shows you that, like, Xavier Woods is like a 65 overness, and this gets a 48. That is just, that is something. But anyways, Omos, a very short match here, 4:33, goes to the claw. Omos gets the win. And like we said, I mean, Omos' overness, I think, is like in the upper 40s. Xavier Woods like 65. So I know this is going to knock Woods a little bit, but I mean, at the end of the day, you guys know what we're trying to accomplish with Omos, and this is kind of what we have to do to get there. So 48, not great here. If we look at sort of the notes we had here, I mean, really, there's not a whole lot. We probably could have added, and I thought I did actually, but I guess I didn't. We could have added the protect Omos note. I just forgot to do that. So this probably should have been a little bit better. That's my own fault. But we're still, getting the penalties here for Omos on all these. But the only way he's going to get any better, I mean, the only way he's going to get more experience is by having more matches and being more involved. So it's kind of what we have to do. But Omos does get the win here over Xavier Woods, and you know what's coming next. Afterwards, Omos is not done, as Kingston is ringside with Xavier Woods. Omos and MVP, they start attacking Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. They are just, attempting to go for the beatdown here to try to finish these two off as well, even though Omos basically may have just done that with Woods. But as they're doing that, the crowd pops big, and we start to look towards people who are just, looking around in the crowd, and it's because here comes Big E. As Big E comes out, again, he's clearly injured. Austin didn't want him to be there, but Big E just did not care. He comes down anyways, and Omos and MVP retreat as Big E makes his way into the ring. So this is, we have Big E sort of defying Austin here, but when you think about it, he defies Austin because he had to come save his friends, and, that's kind of Big E's justification, even though he is not cleared to return to the ring just yet. Big E doesn't care. He's going to, he's willing to risk it for his friends. And that's kind of what he does here as he comes in. Omos and MVP retreat. So that, 74, that's good stuff. But I am just waiting and waiting until we have this match with Big E and Omos, which is coming. We don't even have to announce it. It's going to happen at some point. But that is, that is going to be something on that. Because we did have the match before with them. Remember, it was several months ago, and we had the Big E, AJ stuff going on. And all that, but that was it was just sort of a throwaway match. We didn't really do a whole lot with it, so we'll see what we can get on this. But 74 here, so Big E is back, but still not cleared to return to action just yet. And then Austin back in the parking lot, another Steve Weiser down, but it's because that Steve Weiser has been handed to Becky Lynch. Becky grabs the Steve Weiser as well, and she tells Austin that, she's got all these smiles, she's grinning, where this is headed. She's ready for that title match now against Bayley after the big falling out with Bayley and Sasha last week. Sasha's not here tonight. She has no idea where Sasha is, but she does know that Bayley is the champion, and she has rightfully earned the number one contender after beating Sasha at Unforgiven, and now she is ready to capitalize on that. And Austin says, all right, you want your match? You'll get it next week. It will be Bayley versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. That is going to be a big match. And yes, that will take place next week on Raw. So another big match added to the card. We'll add a couple more. Like we said, Owens will be there. We'll have another one we'll talk about here in a second. But that is official. Bayley versus Becky Lynch. And Becky, holds up a Steve Weiser. Austin's got him a Steve Weiser. They do a little toast, and it is official. That will be the match that takes place. Gets an 82 here. Good stuff. But party time is over because here comes Bayley. Bayley comes in from behind. She lays out Becky in the parking lot, and she is just attacking her. hitting her with the Raw Women's Championship. It gets an 82. I would have liked this to be a little bit better, actually, this one and the previous segment, but that's okay, as it is Bayley taking out Becky from behind, and then Bayley just starts screaming at her, blaming Becky for ruining the friendship with her and Sasha, even though when you think about it, really was not Becky's fault. She just kind of taunted them as they were having their problems. But she just yells at Becky. She just keeps yelling at her. And then we have officials run in. Austin's kind of sitting there. Austin just kind of sitting back. Like, this is, Austin sort of expects it at this point. He realizes that this is just something where all hell is broken loose on Raw. And he understands that this is just kind of, this is what it is. But Austin does eventually get involved. The officials are there. And so they pull Becky away from Bayley. And it's just kind of chaos again. But there's your setup. We will have our Raw Women's Championship match next week. Bayley versus Becky Lynch. And then it is our 6-man tag team match here. 71 overall. Not bad. As it is Cesaro and the Mysterios getting the win over John Morrison and the Lucha Brothers. It almost goes 18 minutes here. Cesaro gets the win over Morrison. It's the sharpshooter that does it. Of course, Dominic, the weak link here, but we're kind of, again, we keep putting Dominic in here because he's someone else that we have to sort of try what we can to get him over, and putting him in these kind of matches, I think that's only going to help, but he'll get there eventually. But if we look at kind of what we got out of this match, I think we did protect Dominic in this one too. Yeah, we did protect Dominic in this. So that is something that helps a little bit. But a 71, it really, kind of sets up what we're going to have moving forward. Cesaro wanted to be in action. We hyped that up earlier. And he does get the win here to kind of keep his momentum going, even after what happened with the WWE Championship match. But I guess we should announce it. Another match added to next week's edition of Raw. It is going to be Rey Mysterio versus Rey Fenix next week on Raw. So we've got Bayley versus Becky. We've got Rey versus Rey. We've got Kevin Owens making his return. And that won't be it. We got more to add to the show, as you'll see next week. But it's going to be, I think, a pretty exciting edition of Raw next week. Not that all of them aren't, but match-wise, this will be a much improved, hopefully, edition of Raw next week with some big matches on tap for that one. So there is, a big win here for this trios group here, getting the win over the Lucha Brothers and John Morrison. And then, this does not go as well as I would have expected. 67 is Daniel Bryan, but he is kind of hyping up Montez Ford, who's not that over, but he's getting there. Bryan hypes up Montez Ford's talents. We've seen these two kind of have a little interaction over the past several weeks with Ford, also wanting his revenge on Edge for what happened, a couple months ago. And Bryan hypes up Montez Ford, talks about how great of an athlete, great of a talent he is. And he knows that this is going to be a very challenging match, and he just, he expects it to be really something that's going to test him in every way, because he knows Montez Ford is an up-and-coming star. So really kind of Bryan putting over Ford a little bit here with this. And then it is Bryan making his entrance. He comes out, and he is ready for this match with Montez Ford. Unfortunately, Montez Ford's music hits, and there's no Montez Ford. He's nowhere to be found. Bryan's in the ring. His music's still going. Montez Ford not coming out. So, that leads to Angelo Dawkins making his way out. And Dawkins is telling Bryan, look, he was here a little while ago. Like, I saw him. Like, I know exactly, he was here. And Dawkins is trying to figure out, what's going on here. Then, here comes Austin. Austin's made his way from the parking lot. He's coming down to the ring, too, to try to figure out what's going on. This gets an 86, so we really needed that on a show like this, because I don't think our rating's going to be great, but it's sort of, again, it ebbs and flows with this kind of stuff. We talk about that all the time, but that's just kind of the way this show's set up. So they make their way down, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and then on the video screen, we see them. It is AJ Styles, Adam Cole, Finn Balor. They are at an undisclosed location here. We see these three And then the camera pans down a little bit, and we see Montez Ford kind of standing there with them, and Ford has been beaten. You can tell he's got blood on his lip, like he has been taken out already. And then it isn't AJ Styles, it isn't Finn Balor, it's Adam Cole, who is standing there with Styles and Balor. And Cole basically, just goes off here. He talks about how, everyone probably thought that the Bullet Club is going to be there tonight. Austin sitting in the parking lot. They've been watching their every move. And he said, just like they told everyone last week, just like Styles said, this is their show now. They're taking over, and they're not alone. And Cole says that's completely different than the way he was treated in NXT. And the same for Balor, treated like an afterthought with egomaniac Triple H coming out of retirement and, all this other stuff. So he's just running down Triple H, running down NXT, and how he's been treated in WWE. He's going to take what's his. The Bullet Club's going to take what's theirs, and they will not let anything hold them back, and no one is off limits. And Cole kind of stares, and then he says, Austin, I want to repeat, no one is off limits here for the Bullet Club. And then we see Montez Ford. We start to see the screen sort of fade out a little bit, and you hear the sound of the beatdown still going on, and that ends it with Dawkins, Bryan, and Austin watching the screen go black, and you can still hear the sound of Montez Ford being attacked by Styles, Cole, and Balor. And that is the way we go off the air. So our main event spoiled once again by the Bullet Club. And they have basically called their shot again. I mean, they have taken another shot. They came in last week. They beat down 4 different people. Now they've added Montez Ford to that list. And you've clearly got a very angry Daniel Bryan, Angelo Dawkins, and Steve Austin, also not very happy about how this played out. So let's see what we get out of this. Okay, so we at least get an 80. That's okay. But yeah, never really thought going in that this was probably going to be one that was going to hit that upper tier in terms of our show. We at least decrease in 4 regions, so that's not bad. But when you go up and down the line here, it was a very angle-heavy show. That's kind of what we do, as you know. But the issue is still going to be, at least early on, it is going to be having Cole and Balor, who are not that over, but we are putting them in those main event slots. But we're also putting people like Ford and Dawkins and those kind of guys as well. We're grouping them with a lot of different people. That's just like, it works out well, and it's structured pretty well now. But like I mentioned, sort of the Game of Thrones reference, that's kind of what we have here. We have a lot of different groups kind of off in different directions, but they're all sort of intertwined. And that's going to allow for, I think, a lot of different matchups, a lot of different storylines, and yeah, this is continuing to play out here. So it's the Bullet Club for a second straight week making their presence felt, and we will see where it goes from here as we set up for a big edition of Raw next week. So I told you, wild month of October for Raw, but let's see what we need to get to before we wrap up. All right, so Raw, excellent, struck gold. I didn't really think we struck gold with a rating, but what do you know? We do. Here is something right here. Oh, man. This is why we should have the working relationship with New Japan. But it looks like Okada has been loaned from New Japan to AEW, so it looks like we are going to get Okada in AEW. Wow, there you go. I'm curious to see what that's going to look like from a match standpoint. I want to know who they're going to pair him up against in AEW. We'll see if we can figure that out. But hopefully it wasn't on Dark Elevation. Hopefully, okay, no Okada appearance on there. So maybe we'll find that on Dynamite, and I will put that into the next video if it's indeed Okada wrestling on Dynamite or something. We'll see. AEW and CMLL. So AEW also a relationship between CMLL. As you'll note, these are all the people that we pretty much hate. If you look at what NXT, remember all the working relationships we have now with NXT. They have started wars with AEW, CMLL, New Japan. So now all of these groups are basically teaming up with each other to go after NXT and us, I suppose, just based on the working relationship. So speaking of NXT, this is what I wanted to sort of note here when we look at sort of the past, matches and everything and all that. So we're going to look real quickly at Adam Cole and Finn Balor because I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when it comes to what we've seen with how they were booked in NXT. All right, so if you look at Adam Cole's booking in NXT here, he had 3 wins and 9 losses. I mean, the matches are good, but Triple H, Triple H, Adam Cole lost a lot of matches that involved Triple H, but also lost to Karrion Kross and Timothy Thatcher. But yeah, that is kind of the issue there with Cole. Now, if we look at Balor's scenario, Balor had 2 matches. I mean, he won both of them. I'll give him credit for that, but he's had 2 matches in 4 months. And they're not matches of note at all. So, all right, and let's look at our email real quick. Okay, Okada's loan to AEW. We're going to definitely keep our eye to see what AEW does with him. Raw gets a 3.78. I'm not sure exactly where that lands there, but that is worth noting. It's also worth noting here, our cooling down period is almost through. We are almost through that. 39 days to go. And we've clearly moved above the threshold, 77. We have, our popularity's increased back up to the 78 where we started. We kind of had that dip for a little bit, but we have made our way back up. So I think we'll be just fine on that. But that was Raw, and I mentioned earlier, on the next episode, it will be our go-home edition of SmackDown before we get to No Mercy. But I will excitedly tell you that I have been putting the finishing touches on the Mae Young Classic. We already knew where we wanted to go with it. Already knew what the storylines were going to be and kind of have everything mapped out. But we've kind of put all the details in now. We've got the entire tournament booked out. And, I talk about my excitement for everything we've had going on this save, but I am telling you, I think this Mae Young Classic is going to be one of, if not the most exciting thing we've done thus far. I just think there's so many different little plot points we're going to be able to hit with this tournament. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And so, as I mentioned in the comments too, that, my goal is to make this the best women's wrestling tournament in the history of wrestling. And so that is something to keep in mind. It will not be your traditional Mae Young Classic in terms of having a lot of outsiders come in or anything like that. Our goal is to use who we have, because that is kind of, I think, one of the issues we've had with the women's division is, there's no reason to just kind of, we want to give everyone an opportunity. We've kind of built the division up over the past month or so, bringing, some people back and that kind of stuff. We are going to try to build the ultimate women's tournament for WWE. And I think it will be something that the payoff will be worth it. But it will look a little bit different maybe than the traditional reality, Mae Young Classic as it's been presented before in the past. So, but I still think it will be something that you guys will greatly enjoy. And I'm excited to get to that. And we will announce the bracket. We're going to do a separate video announcing the bracket for the Mae Young Classic. We will do that. I believe that's going to come, obviously it's going to come after No Mercy, but it may be the first week after. I think it's going to be November week 2. I believe that's when we're going to announce that. I have to look at my notes, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be right. So there you go. That was Raw. As always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And on the next episode, it will be the go-home edition of SmackDown before No Mercy.